Welcome back. In our summaries tonight, the Deputy Minister of Finance, Kweku Kwarteng, is assuring government has no plans of introducing new taxes in the 2020 budget. And in Zimbabwe, bread prices are on the rise. It's increased by 39%. We have details coming up.
Deputy Finance Minister Kweku Kwarteng has assured the government has no plans of introducing new taxes in the 2020 budget to be laid before Parliament in November, according to Graphic Online, in what is expected to be a welcome relief for businesses and their employees and the public in general. He said the government would rather review some of the tax reliefs it granted in the previous budget. The government and stakeholders of the textile industry have agreed on a roadmap for the implementation of policy interventions against the importation of fake textile products and other unfair practices that have stifled the growth of local companies in the sector. The roadmap starts with the signing of a document on Friday that will allow for the implementation of a textile tax stamp policy. 24 rural and community bank managers across Ghana have pledged their commitment to offer credit facilities to farmers with warehouse receipts from certified warehouses. The bank managers also indicated that giving more loans to the farmers will enable them to increase their agricultural portfolios while supporting farmers to produce more food to expand their respective local economies. Zimbabwean baking companies increased the price of bread by 39% a day after the government hiked the cost of wheat by a similar margin. A loaf of bread now costs 9.45 Zimbabwe dollars or 81 US cents compared with 6.80 Zimbabwe dollars. The state-run Grain Millers Association of Zimbabwe on Monday hiked wheat prices to 2,200 Zimbabwe dollars from 1,600 Zimbabwe dollars. A group of 50 states and territories in the U.S. have launched an investigation into Google's dominance of the online advertising market. The coalition warned that the search giants may be threatening competition and consumers. They also raised concerns over the way Google ranks its search results and protects users' personal data.
All right, welcome back to the bulletin. The Bank of Ghana has assured that it has put in place measures to prevent a recurrence of another banking sector crisis. Speaking at the third edition of the Joy Business Financial Services Forum under the theme Financial Services Cleanup, What Next? Head of Banking Supervision at the Bank of Ghana, JC, said the regulator will go ahead with further reforms to protect the sector. Here's Ebenezer Sabote's report.
Recent banking sector cleanup has been described as an exercise to ensure strict enforcement measures by the central bank to, among others, protect depositors' funds and bring bank confidence in the sector. According to the head of banking supervision, JC, the central bank is well positioned to ensure due diligence is conducted before new licenses are issued.
The necessary structures have been put in place and people have been made aware that they will be accountable for their actions. We have put in place clearly defined framework for licensing of banks, capital verification, all the procedures are clearly spelled out. And we want to ensure that we enforce them. We have various control levels, people who initiate their transactions and another person would have to check, and before we issue with the license, we'll make sure that we have ticked all the boxes.
On his part, banking consultant Dr. Richmond Echiahene charged the Bank of Ghana to remain focused with enforcement of banking rules to avoid another crisis.
If they will stick to it and ensure everybody is compliant, then they never again, even if you come there, it will not be as huge as the 20. Now they are quoting $3 billion to $4 billion. That's what the Minister of Finance said.
Yeah, about 14 billion, projected about 20 billion.
A lot of money. When your capex, the capital expenditure for the whole nation for 2 years is not up to that.
Corporate governance consultant Marian Bano also thinks a rigorous sanction regime should be applied.
The regulator has, in this context and in today's environment, the regulator has to be ferocious. if you have assets in your house and you are protecting those assets, you don't put a pet dog in your house. You bring a ferocious dog to protect your assets. So the regulator has to be very aggressive and ferocious, and that will be an incentive for good behavior.
The Financial Services Forum brought together several industry players within the banking and capital market space to deliberate on the post-banking sector cleanup.
Meanwhile, Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Reverend Daniel Ogbamitete, has blamed the crisis faced in the financial sector on the behavior of some shareholders of financial institutions. He also assures the cleanup exercise will be an ongoing process for all regulators, but noted the approach will be different.
At the core of the challenges we are having is bad behavior, whether it's at the regulator level or the market operator level or the client. And so my question is, can bad behavior ever stop? If I wear my other cap as a preacher, I would say that the reason why we continue to preach is because there's always bad behavior. So in effect, I don't think that we can say that we will never do another cleanup. Probably is the scale of the cleanup, because what has happened, I guess, is quite significant. And I believe that going forward, as regulators, we need to keep our eye on the ball and keep doing what we have to do. From where I sit, I agree that corporate governance is a challenge, but we have come up with a corporate governance code for listed companies. We've also come up with conduct of business guidelines for our market operators. And these guidelines specify things to do with composition of the board, the independence of the board, the fact that it's not just about having non-executive directors on the board, but they must be independent, non-executive directors. We are looking at the fit and proper test. We are looking at some continuous training program for directors to be sure that corporate governance, best practice is applied within our market operators. And we are also putting in place measures to strengthen enforcement, because enforcement is always a challenge. No matter the resources you have as a regulator, you realize that you still need to put in some more effort in the area of enforcement, because human behavior, for what it is, would want to find ways around.
All right, and that's just a bit of what happened at the Labadi Beach Hotel earlier in the day when the Joy Business Financial Services Forum took place. And joining me in studio to talk a bit more about what we saw or heard today is my colleague Philip Namfori, who is a Joy Business researcher and analyst as well. Interesting conversation we've had today, and welcome to us anyway.
Thank you very much.
I'll start with what stood out for me, and that was Prince Amwabing, who is the founder of the defunct UT Bank, seeking to say that the central bank sort of ran down his bank. What was he trying to say there?
Okay, Daryl. So I figured that would stand out for you. He was just trying to, and as he was speaking, he kept on saying that I'll be very blunt, I'll be very open, I'll be very honest. And he believes the methodology the Bank of Ghana employed in taking care of some of the banks, he believes it was subjective. He believes one broom was used to brush all these banks that were collapsed. Rather, he should have looked at it in a different way. He said they should have gone case-by-case basis. And as soon as he said that, the Bank Information Department head, Mr. Osejisi, said in their press releases, they stated case-by-case what each bank's issue was. So he disagreed with him on that. But he also believes this issue on the 14th of August, 2017, when the purchase and assumption agreement was finalized, these police security men, staff being at the front of some of the GCB, the UT banks and all that, he felt it was a bit unnecessary. This could have been done in a better manner. And he made reference to the fact that he has engaged I'm sure he has engaged the governor of the Bank of Ghana, and he believes he's a calm gentleman. So he was surprised at this approach, and those were his words, paraphrased. So you could see that he wasn't very, but I think he also acknowledged that if UT was beyond saving, then fine. But he felt like some issues in the run-up, particularly on the point of the investors they were bringing to augment their capital and revitalize growth, was a problem. So these were some of the things that he raised at the forum. I don't know whether we can listen to him or we can watch him.
I think we're trying to get us that sound bite. I don't know if we have that right now. But we also had the head of banking supervision of the central bank say, well, we are not the ones to blame for the collapse of the banks, but the shareholders of these banks. And
Dr. Etuahene took us back to a report from the IMF, 2011, that chronicled what we are seeing in 2017, 18, and 19. And he believes that if we had followed through with this IMF report, a financial stability assessment report, we wouldn't have been in this mess. And Darryl, interesting enough, if I asked you what's the difference between a banking sector reform and a banking sector cleanup, what would you say?
I have no idea. Can you answer that?
So, after some of the panelists agreed that this whole cleanup is not over, Mrs. Marambano used an analogy where if you go to the dentist for teeth cleaning or whitening, and you start putting candy, caffeine, etc., you come back again for some whitening.
I sort of get the drift.
Yes, but as soon as she said that, Mr. Soedisi said the cleanup is done, but the reforms aren't. Then everybody laughed in the room there. Because,
so what's happening right
now? Yes, so he feels like, yes, the cleanup in terms of taking out some of the institutions, etc., is done, but the reforms will continue. Some were saying semantics. I literally heard people on my right saying the word semantics. So it's open up to debate. That was one interesting light issue that came up. But the issue of corporate governance, and not with regards to the banks, but with regards to the Bank of Ghana. Why? If you look at the Bank of Ghana's Act as amended, you would realize that the governor is the head of the Bank of Ghana itself as governor. And this is not a personality attack. This is what is in the law. So whoever comes in will have to go by the law. He's the head of the bank, he's the head of the board, and he's the head of the monetary policy. And two of our panelists, Dr. Etuahene, Mrs. Marambano, feel like this is in itself is a corporate governance issue.
Not to cut you, but I think that we can get bits of what Marambano had to say, talking about the fact that we should not only appoint men and women of integrity, but appoint people who can be independent-minded and who will not be controlled by shareholders. All right. We'll get that for you. So, interesting point about corporate governance.
One may argue this is to ensure that the Bank of Ghana's independence is guaranteed. One may argue you are giving too many powers to the governor. He's the board chair. He's the one who ensures the day-to-day as the management, as the governor, and he's the MPC head. So all these concentrated in one man's hands becomes a corporate governance issue, which we are finding out, I beg your pardon, where some of the issues in the banking sector.
We can listen to Marambano right now.
Talking about the shareholders, we are talking about the directors, we are talking about management, we are talking about the internal auditor and the external auditor, we are talking about the company secretary, and we are talking about the regulator. Now, if you look at this structure, the most important pillar is the board of directors, because the shareholder sometimes is the culprit. The shareholder has self-interest, but it is the board of directors who hold the balance. But then the question is, how strong are they? How strong is the board? That is why corporate governance today is talking about independence in the boardroom. Independent-minded people who are strong enough and are able to check the shareholder who owns the business.
Okay, so how independent is the board?
Yes, so what she's trying to refer to is on boards. Darryl, we need a preponderance of independent non-executive directors. Let me explain quickly. On the board, we have a mix between executive directors who form part of day-to-day running of the bank. We have non-executive directors who have some connection to the bank but do not form day-to-day running of the bank. What now corporate governance is advocating for is INED, That's independent non-executive directors. You have no affiliation whatsoever to the business apart from the fees you are paid. So they're in a better position to challenge what is going on the board. So you just don't sit on the board and rubber stamp. She also added that the education and training we give to board members, being on the board, especially of a bank, is no joke. People think it's child's play. We walk in, hey, ha, ha, ha. No, you need more training. We need to keep on the go. And BOG has in its fit and proper, etc., some of these directives, stipulations on who can be a board member. We need to enforce this to the letter. Compliance also came up there. We need to enforce this. A lot of issues came up there. Let me touch on one more thing before we go on. Now, the issue about the financial sector regulation and some of the laws we have. Mrs. Marabana was advocating for some new legislation. Let me give an example from what Reverend Obami said. The Securities Industry Act, 2016, Act 929, it says that if somebody offends for a particular offense, the punishment there is 12 Ghana cedis. In penalty units, I'm not very sure. But Reverend Obama himself said it. So if somebody commits an offense and it's in contravention of the Securities Industry Act, what he's going to pay is 12 Ghana cedis. Darrow, is that punitive or pecuniary enough for that person? No. Not. So we need to relook at some of these laws regulating the financial sector and see if we can make some amendments here and there. So these were some of the issues. There were a lot, I'm sure, in our subsequent bulletins we'll be discussing them.
The question is, where do we go from here? Now what's the now what question? Was it answered?
Yes. Liquidity. One, we need funds. Private Enterprise Federation mentioned this. 2, compliance. Very necessary. 3, confidence. Without it, the financial sector is, boom, useless, nothing. We need that confidence back. And these regulators must ensure that there's greater coordination between all of them to ensure that everything is well and good.
Thanks very much. Very insightful there. I believe that the conversation will continue. Thank you very much indeed, Philip Namfori, for the update from the Joy Business Financial Services from the 3rd edition. You may want to watch videos in case you missed out on it on our website, nigeriaonline.com/business. While still in the banking space, rural banks in Ghana are more resilient and strong enough to withstand shocks and that hit savings and loans companies and microfinance companies in ongoing banking reforms. That's according to the chief executive of Echima Kwahoma Rural Bank, Safo Kantanka. He says rural banks are better positioned to deal with any external shock that may arise as a result of the ongoing financial sector reforms. His comments come as the Bank of Ghana asks rural banks facing liquidity challenges to seek strategic partnerships to avoid actions against them by the central bank. My colleague Ohim Interior has more in this report.
Bank of Ghana announced in June this year, rural banks are next after microfinance and microcredit institutions in its banking sector reforms. At least, there are 144 registered rural and community banks in the country as at the end of January. The banking sector reform has already seen licenses of 385 microfinance companies as well as 23 savings and loans banks revoked. Mr. Safo Kantanka alleges the fears of customers since rural banks are structurally and operationally sound to meet Bank of Ghana's regulatory scrutiny.
Yes, these banking reforms and what is happening to the savings and loans companies, I think those who are very close to the rural banks will get to know that our ownership structure is quite different from the savings and loans companies. This is a bank that is owned by the community. And therefore, Bank of Ghana knows that where we are and the people we are serving, the vacuum that we are filling, is such that Bank of Ghana cannot just come and say we are closing the rural banks. Because there are some areas, if you don't have the rural bank, salary workers will find it very difficult to get their salary. They will have to travel longer distances. Again, we have been able to put measures in place such that, what happened to the savings and loans companies cannot happen in a rural bank. It cannot happen in a rural bank because we've come a long way. 43 years rural banking in Ghana is a long way. Even though we've gone through some checkered history, we think that for now we are resilient, we are very strong, and we'll be able to meet whatever demands that our customers put in place. So our customers should set their heart at peace. We are quite different. We are quite unique in the provision of services to clients.
Echima Kwahoma Rural Bank, which was established 36 years ago, is a member of Ghana's Club 100 elite business entities. Often considered a pace setter in rural banking, it presently operates 9 branches in the Ashanti region with a capital adequacy ratio of more than 45%. Officials of the bank have been interacting with customers on the occasion of its anniversary. Mr. Safo Kantanka explains the bank and other players in the subsector are adequately prepared for the financial sector reforms.
Oh, we have a very good performing loan rating. In fact, honestly speaking, I can confidently tell you that our recovery rate is about 96%. It's about 96%. Why 96%? We've been able to sharpen the skills of our credit officers, and they give a lot of training also to our customers. We have a lot of discussions, and we normally come into a mutual agreement before loan terms are set. We do the loan terms that will be of mutual benefit to both the customer and the bank. And this has been our secret. Where a customer even goes through problems, we sit down with the customer.
From Kumasi for Joy News, Ohiminteria reporting.
We also have been following the AGI's Industrial Summit, where Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Yofi Grant, has been lamenting the failure of Ghanaian investors and business operators to take risks in business. Speaking at the summit in Accra, Mr. Grant charged local businesses to take advantage of diverse incentive packages and programs the GIPC continues to offer businesses. Charles Aite has more in this report.
Yofi Grant is concerned about the low pace at which Ghanaian businesses and investors explore investment opportunities in the country. He cites a 2018 McKinsey report which indicates that no company in Ghana has an annual total revenue of $500 million. Yofi Grant took his turn at the AGI Industrial Summit and Exhibition.
McKinsey, I'm sure you know McKinsey, the management consulting company, they recently released a report on business in Africa. And one of the observations was that there were 438 countries in Africa that were generating revenues of $1 billion and more. Nigeria had 42 of those countries. How many did Ghana have? 0. Ghana didn't even have, and these are private sector companies. Ghana doesn't even have one private sector company that is generating revenues of more than $500 million a year.
Trade Minister Alan Tremantin charged business leaders and captains of industry to use recent business reforms as a catalyst for growth.
The type of incentives that you offer to local industries also determine how competitive they will be. And we have a host of incentives, whether for 1D, 1F or GIPC. Some of you can't even memorize the incentives. How would you take advantage of it? Like the GIPC, you don't know. Some of you are sitting here, you don't know. You can bring in equipment, machinery, duty-free. Because you are not focusing on what you need to focus on.
Meanwhile, the VRA has offered to provide competitive price power to local industries. This is to help ease the cost of operations as the Continental Free Trade Agreement kickstarts in 2020. Chief Executive of the Volta River Authority, Engineer Emmanuel Nchudakwa, charged the AGI to use this intervention to remain competitive.
Power delivered from a combination of the most the cheapest source. So it can't be just a single number, but it's got to be a range of numbers, because you deliver a bit from hydro, which is cheap, a little bit of power from thermal, which is slightly more expensive, but you optimize it in a way that it's competitive.
This year's AGI Ghana Industrial Summit and Exhibition is on the theme Strengthening Ghanaian Industries for Global Competitiveness. It runs through to Thursday, September 12th.
And that's our program tonight. Thanks for watching Business Live. As always, more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. We have more from that Joy Business Financial Services Forum for you to read and to watch as well. myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Darryl Carl. Thanks for watching. We are back same time tomorrow.